Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. This week our guest is the author of Fight, How Gen Z is Channeling Their Fear and Passions to Save America, the director of polling at the Harvard Kennedy School Institute of Politics, John Della Volpe. Remember, we love taking your questions, so write into politicswarroom@gmail.com or send a tweet to @Politicon for next week's show. We'll get to as many as we can, but don't forget to tell us where you're from. Before we get started, we have some exciting news. James and I are taking Politics War Room live to the 92nd Street Y in New York City on September 19th. The 92nd Street Y, there is no better venue. You can get tickets at politicon.com/tour. That's again, politicon.com/tour, and we can't wait to see you there. Tell your friends about us and remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Please check out the link to our sponsor, Quince, in our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting our sponsors. It really helps make this podcast happen. Hey, James, we have a lot to talk about today, but I again want to remind everyone out there, we are so excited about being at the 92nd Street Y on September 19th. Everybody ought to go try to get their tickets now because it's going to be a big one. We're going to have an exciting guest. We'll tell you later, but James, it's going to be a big one.
It's not. I mean, 92nd Street Y is like as big as you get. I mean, it's not just, people say the Y, it's not the YMCA. It's actually like the epicenter of Jewish culture in Manhattan, or just total culture in Manhattan, and the lineup of people out of tear is something breathtaking. So I'm really looking forward to it. They're very, very gracious hosts. Everything is first class. The sound systems, the you name it. I mean, and the questions, the audience. So you really want to be part of this.
You do. You get your go to get your tickets at politicon.com/tour. That's politicon.com/tour. And we can't wait to see you there. James, week 2, and Kamala Harris continues to impress. She's drawing good crowds, notably in Atlanta the other day, and she stays on message. Good sign in that Atlanta speech was embracing the bipartisan border bill that Trump ordered Republicans to kill for political reasons. Trump and the Republicans think immigration is really her big Achilles heel, and it could be. But Tom Suozzi showed in that New York special congressional election earlier this year that if you take the offensive on immigration, it's going to annoy some on the left, and it's not going to be a plus for you, but you can mitigate the downside. It looks like she may be doing that. I sure hope so. 3 questions, I think, James, about her, 11-day campaign now. The Republican attacks are in full force, much of it legitimate, quoting her own words on the border, Medicare for all, fracking, that ill-fated 2019 presidential campaign. How's she going to respond? 2, vice presidential choice in the next several days. New names are out there. No one, though, I think is, would be a negative. I still think Josh Shapiro and Mark Kelly may be the top 2 choices, but I want to get your take. And finally, who is running this campaign? The Biden infrastructure is good, but she needs someone with experience who she'll listen to in crises. Every campaign has a crisis. Someone at the top. It's only been 10 days, but time is not a luxury, James.
Well, on the encouraging side is they showed me a spot last night at Ari Melba, and it's exactly the spot that they talking about when she was a prosecutor.
Yeah, okay? I've seen that.
Now, finally, somebody, and understand this, and I'm going to say this as clearly as I can. Anybody that has ever listened to anything that the progressive left has ever said has lived to profoundly regret it. I'm literally on every issue, they're dead ass wrong. Ask Elizabeth Warren in Medicare for All. She blew her campaign up with one speech. All right. Ask the defund the police people. Ask the whole, and what happened to her, the quite legitimate thing. Somebody says, well, it wasn't a sister, it was a Smith. I'd love to read a good article on who really was the strategic idiot behind her 2020 presidential campaign because they were real fucking idiots. All right. Why is the border an issue? Because Biden listened to these people early in his term. They weren't just wrong, they were catastrophically wrong. Understand that. These people are not just wrong, they're literally walking catastrophes. And the fastest people realize that, the better off they're going to be. And they don't have very much power. I wish she'd tell them all to go fuck themselves. And it probably get with a little bit, their power is totally exaggerated. They can't win an election outside of a D plus 25 district.
Okay, who's she going to go through the vice presidential stuff?
It's I'd like, but maybe there's somebody else. I'll give a 25% chance she surprises us. But of the names that I hear from Josh or Mark Kelly, I don't know, but he seems like he's got a sterling resume. Tim Walz was. I would totally kind of wish she would go with somebody young. But I'm sure they've decided by now. And Josh is 70% on predicted. So I don't know what that means, but the markets think it's going to be Shapiro. But I have zero insight into it.
James, I don't either, and I am a big Shapiro fan. I think if the reason to pick Shapiro is mainly or solely Pennsylvania, that's a mistake. You don't pick someone for carrying one state. I mean, I think Josh Shapiro probably might assure him of carrying Pennsylvania. Would he also assure him of carrying Michigan or Nevada or Georgia? You pick Josh Shapiro because it'll help you not just in Pennsylvania. Same with Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly will help you on the border, little border issue, help you in Arizona. I think it's a ticket that has to look comfortable and good. In other words, it's a ticket that has to look like anything but the Trump Vance ticket.
Well, I don't think it's going to look anything like that. I don't know if I've never been a big believer in picking somebody because of the state, but what Josh has is a real kind of can-do, get things done. I mean, when the Republican Senate candidate is trying to jump under your skirt, you must be pretty goddamn popular. All right, that's something that doesn't happen very often. And the other thing is, he's a real savvy politician. That's what I really like. He had the campaign to the cycle in 2022. He has some nice, nasty political habits, which I like.
All right, very good. How about, do you agree with me on the necessity of picking someone to run this campaign? You talked earlier about her ill-fated 19 campaign when she listened to I don't know who, her sister or California strategist. Right. I mean, I think it matters that she picked someone. I think it mattered, frankly, in 1992 that Hillary Clinton ordered Bill Clinton, to stop all these gang group meetings and pick the guy from Louisiana to run it. I think it mattered that David Plouffe and David Axelrod ran that Obama campaign. I think it matters, and I don't know where she is now.
Well, I don't know if that spot is any indication. She's in at least a better place, and I kind of think from what I know, I've been talking to people, and I guess she doesn't have much choice, but she's going to rely very heavily on the kind of Washington progressive infrastructure. And these people, for the most part, are not very talented. Some are. And so let's see what emerges. But, I mean, right now, they're getting the schedule out. They're doing some things. They're vetting the VP. So we'll see. But, I'm sure there'll be a story forthcoming. And, the old Biden people are also a factor. I mean, there's a lot of different competing interest groups. The old Biden people, they still there. They want to campaign. You got the new people who want to spring in. You got the whole NARAL, Wembley's List, Sierra Club. That entire infrastructure there. And we're going to learn a lot about where's she leaning, where's she getting advice. But I think there's some reason to be hopeful. The one point I want to bring up, and I really want to bring this up. Trump has lost his punch. Now, whether that continues or not, I don't know. But he ain't landing anything.
Yeah, he's off balance.
He's not landing. It's just he's off balance. But he's not. But the same like nicknames and shit like that, they just don't work anymore. And I don't care how good an act that you have. It gets old. It tires. The best comedian just kind of ran out of gas at the end. And I don't know if I know he's out of gas right now. He gets it back, or they get some really good negatives. But his punches are just not landing. They're clumsy. They're tired. This is something that we got to watch. We got to watch it. But right now, they're not landing.
James, there may be a reason he's tired. People ought to know that the age issue has not gone away. That Donald Trump is now the oldest presidential nominee ever. And maybe he's showing it. Let's talk about the other half of that ticket. Our friend Tom Etzel had a good piece on JD Vance, concluding it's still unclear whether it'll be a plus or a minus. I think Tom is being a little bit too kind. I think the childless cat lady is a mantra that's going to follow him for the next 97 days. And when the Wall Street Journal editorial page, not the news pages, not my alma mater, but the editorial page rips into you and you're a Republican vice presidential candidate, that ain't good news. He suffers from contradictory problems. On the one hand, he has embraced such strident right-wing positions on abortion, among other things. And then at the other hand, he seems willing to change his mind and any positions to please Commander Trump. I just can't see what the plus side is to JD Vance.
Well, I didn't read it. I got to read it. What the fuck is Tom talking about? It could be a plus.
Well, I think Tom, on balance, thinks he's more likely to be a negative. He said it's.
Well, I understand. Yeah. I don't think it's very debatable. And the guy's really, really deeply messed up. He's all fucked up on the abortion shit. I've never seen anything stick like the cat woman. Now they're pointing out that, Dolly Parton doesn't have children. The Pope doesn't have children. Jesus didn't have children. All right? I think it's, I'm not even hedging my bet here. This was a catastrophic political comment. Catastrophic.
Well, I think you're right. And I probably exaggerated Tom Etzel's position, although his bottom line was, there's still, it remains to be seen. There's nothing that JD Vance has done, and now it's been, 2 weeks, that has been anything but a problem. And I'm not one to bring up religion in a campaign, but it looks to me like he is really kind of one of those Opus Dei Catholics. And I think that's a problem. It's not a problem that he's Catholic, obviously, but it is a problem if he's an Opus Dei Catholic. That's it.
Read the Financial Times. Mm-hmm. They're recruiting 14-year-olds and beating them. All right, read the FT, which is a pretty goddamn credible thing. And the guy that bought him, that converted him, is actually from Baton Rouge. He now lives in Budapest. His name is Rod Dreher. You can look him up because, no one's going to pay attention to him because he's from Baton Rouge, but he's the most influential person that there is by far in that kind of swamp or whatever you want to call it. And he's the guy that converted Vance. And I know I've had Rod at my class a couple times. Actually, personally, I like a guy. He is living in Hungary and being paid by the Hungarian government. So if anybody wanted to do a little background on JD Vance and and Rod is not even a Catholic anymore. He's Greek Orthodox or something. He's had people have complicated religious journeys. He certainly is one of them. But I don't say anything personally bad about Rod. But man, he's got some views, and he's the guy that brought Vance in.
Well, so far it's been you'd have to say good week for Harris and company, and with some questions, I still worry about who's going to run that campaign, James. I think if you leave it to a different group, some of the Biden people, some of the progressives, some of the California, I think that's what she did last time. We saw what happened.
I'm afraid it's going to be a committee.
That's a problem. But
I
hope not.
I'm genuine. There's one other thing that I want to point out. If you read the Washington Post today on a Trump campaign, and I think it's paragraph 18, the guy speaks, wouldn't give his name because it's for obvious reasons, but the editors let it through. And it was very important. I would take 5-1 odds that he blurts out the N-word before the election.
Well,
you'd have to give me 5-1, but I'd take it.
Well, the context was his nephew said he used it in the past.
I know Fred Trump III said that. But if you read the article, what the campaign staffer said, I think the Post, I don't think they're a friend of ours, they're a sponsor of ours, they would not make this up. And that had to be, journalism better than I do, but before they published that as a non-attributable source, they had to think it was important to put it in the story.
Editor knew the editor had to know the source, right?
Right. And the guy basically said, we're mortified. He's going to say, you didn't say it exactly like that, but you couldn't interpret it any other way. And I think it's 5-1.
Okay. Anybody out there want to take it, take it. All right. A lot to do. We'll be, we've got a lot to discuss still today. And don't forget the 92nd Street Y, September 19th.
Take your style to the next level with Quince. What I love about a show, I always thinking of something new. All right. And this is not just a new idea, but a damn good idea. And, there's all the books about the clothes makes the person, how do you dress? That's the impression that you can't do anything about your looks, but you can do something about the clothes you wear. And that very often makes a statement about you. And why not make a good statement out of shoot? You only get one chance to make a first impression.
I'm sure many of you out there have opened your closet and asked, why did I buy that? My wife usually does that to my closet. We definitely used to. But then you can discover Quince. And thanks to Quince, there are a lot fewer misses and a lot more hits that you'll be wearing season after season. Quince has all the seasonal essentials, like 100% European linen shirts for $30. Listen, $30.
Yes, $30. I'd buy a T-shirt for $30.
Oh, unless it had LSU on it, then it'd be a little bit more. Plus performance polos, versatile activewear, and more, all on their super easy to navigate website. The best part is that all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. Now, that's because Quince partners directly with top factories, which allows them to cut the cost of the middleman and pass the savings on to you, the buyer, the consumer. In this economy, that's a must. More importantly, Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. Add in their premium fabrics and finishes, and we can say we love it all. Our favorites so far have been the Flow Knit Breeze Performance Polo and their 100% European linen pants. The material feels amazing, and they're the perfect combo for looking good and keeping cool in the summer heat. The style is perfect for a summer party, business meeting, or getting things done around the hill. As comfortable as the fabrics are, we guarantee you'll be even more comfortable with the prices. Style, luxury, and price. It's the perfect combo. You have to check out everything Quince has to offer. Now is the time to fill your closet with timeless pieces you'll be wearing for summers to come with Quince. Go to quince.com/warroom for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/warroom to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince, JohnDellaVolpe.com/war room. You can find the link in our show notes. John Della Volpe is the director of polling at Harvard's Kennedy School's Institute of Politics, and he is the foremost expert in the world, not just the United States, on young voters. John, first, thanks for joining us. 3 weeks ago, I think I read the stuff that you write, and we've talked. There was a strong sense that young voters were really turned off at the choice between a 78 and an 81-year-old man candidate. Has that changed with Kamala Harris?
Hell yeah, it's changed, Al. Thank you so much for having me back. It has changed in dramatic ways. You know, I've been doing this at the IOP now for 25 years, focusing on young people. To me, Al, I think about two moments in the last couple of decades that remind me of this moment now. First of which was the early 07, 08 Obama days, when back in those days, millennials felt connected to politics in significant ways, the hopefulness, they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. But I'm also reminded from just a few years ago, the feeling that I saw in polling and in focus groups and just across communities after Parkland. You know, there was a steeliness, there was a grit, there was a determination to organize and to change the country. To me, the last couple of weeks, I felt like a combination of each of those events. And for me, who's someone who cares so much about young people participating, it's really exciting.
You know, one of the big issues for young people, not the only one, certainly, there are other ones that you've written about, but one of them is reproductive freedom. And certainly Kamala Harris is a better advocate of that than Joe Biden was. But will the Trump gambit to claim that, hey, it's not a federal issue, abortion really is something just left to the states, will that mitigate that issue with young voters?
You know, I think that's something that I'm going to be paying particularly close attention to, Al. Over the last several months, I felt like in a lot of the qualitative research I was doing that sadly, a lot of women felt resigned to have lost that right and did not seem as energized by that issue as certainly was the case in mid and late 2022. I think this is now kind of a game changer, and I think we'll see both reproductive health become an issue, but also I think the broader lens of freedom generally, right? And a sense of the things that this generation and other generations took for granted that the Republican Party seems intent on taking away. So I think this is an entry point into a much larger, a much more meaningful conversation about freedoms generally.
You know, John, you may have better data. No one has as good data as you do. But the exit polls last time show that Biden won 60% of the 18 to 29 vote with a pretty good turnout. Can Harris match or exceed that?
I think she needs to, Al. The magic number for the last couple of decades, I've always said, is for Democrats to feel good about the Electoral College. He or she needs to hit 60% on a national basis with younger people. And Biden was only the second Democrat to do that the last couple of decades. Obama got 66% of the youth vote in 08. He got 60% in 2012. And John Kerry before that, and Hillary Clinton after that, were kind of in the mid 50s. So I think 60% is that magic number. But you have to obviously kind of match that with a significant turnout. Yeah, I think she can get that. I think that, she's certainly, 4 or 5 points stronger already this last couple of weeks than relative to Biden. And a lot of the polling now, she's right around 59, 60, 61%. So needs to hold it. But I think that is certainly kind of within reach. And the thing about young people, as you know, they're everywhere, right? They're in every single battleground state. And there hasn't been actually a lot of variability in the last couple cycles in terms of opinions of young people.
Yeah. James Carville.
So I think I'll allude to it, but the number is 17% contribution, 62% share of the vote, right?
That's about right.
Not right. Okay. And do you see that as possible as November?
I absolutely do. I do. And getting north of 60, will depend, I think, obviously on independent third-party candidates. But I definitely think it is in the realm of possibility. I do.
So John, there's a lot of stupid shit that I hear. And I used to hear this all the time, still do. Goddamn, James, my niece came home for Thanksgiving from Swarthmore with her friends, and then these young people are really liberal. I said, that's indicative of not very much. Okay? Young people that go to Swarthmore are not exactly the. Tell us who young people are. How many are in college? How many on the minimum wage? Just give us a little overview of 18 to 30 in America, because everybody thinks they're Ivy League students or University of Chicago or UCLA, and I don't think that's the case. And I think you can back me up on that.
Of course. Well. This is the educated generation of young people we've had. You still have only 25% of that youth cohort currently in a 4-year college or university. Right. One. The second thing is they are far more pragmatic than I think we give them credit for. I spend tons and tons of time on the road talking to people, and the concerns that they have are the same concerns that their parents and their grandparents have. The concerns are about cost of living. The concerns are about having some financial independence and some stability in their lives. And that's something I think not enough people can appreciate about this generation. Yes, they believe in a robust government. They believe that government ought to be part of the solution. But they, I think, have much more in common than kind of older generations in terms of kind of what their priorities are.
What percent of 18 to 30 is not white?
It's roughly half. You have you basically have 20% about 50% Latino, 15% African American, and then Asian, roughly half and half.
So they're considerably less white than over 55.
Well, let me pick up on that, because one of the problems that were highlighted were for Democrats were young Black males. Do you have any sense of how that might play out?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that for a second, because among all younger African Americans and Blacks, we saw 4 or 5 years ago, 2/3 of them in the Harvard polling indicated that they were Democrats. Okay, just party ID Democrats. A year ago, it was 49%, and today it's 47%. So there's been a massive, disconnect, really, between the kind of the younger African American community and the Democratic Party. It doesn't mean that they're Republicans. Most all of them have moved from Democrats to independent. So they went from 66% to now less than 50%. And that is I think, of significant concern for Democrats, because during that same time, over the last 3, 4, 5 years, their values when it comes to the role of government have become actually more progressive. Right? They identify as progressive, their values look more progressive, but they have not identified with the Democratic Party to the extent that they have in the past. So this is going to be like a critical opportunity, I think, for the Harris campaign to begin to kind of reconnect specifically with the younger generation of young Black African American folks.
And how about young Hispanics?
Similar trend that we're seeing, except that rather than moving from Democrat to independent, we certainly see some more leakage to the Republican Party among younger Hispanics. I think a lot of that is that kind of the economic anxiety that they're feeling, and the degree to which they don't really see a significant difference. Younger folks don't see the difference between what the Democratic Party and the Republican Party has been about. Interestingly, I've been just looking at some of the national polling, and we both looked at kind of pre and post New York Times poll, pre and post Economist UW polling, and I'm really intrigued by the fact that Harris over the last 2 or 3 weeks seems to be in both of those polls seems to pick up some significant headway with Hispanics, which. Again, we'll see if that sticks, but I'm particularly interested in that, because that could be something that not a lot of people factoring in here could make a big difference.
Yeah, sure could. John, are there impediments to young people voting?
Yeah, that's a great question. Listen, there are a lot. I think there are there's basically two or three kinds of impediments. The first of which are basically kind of what I would call the mechanical, disadvantages. Whether it's on college campuses, the fact that they move quite a bit in terms of voter registration. There's been a lot of work and millions of dollars invested by the civic community to address those. However, I think there are even more significant barriers, and those barriers are related to kind of attitude, right? And that more people vote when they can see the tangible difference that voting can make. And it's been difficult, specifically the last 4 years, despite the fact that I argue that the Biden-Harris administration has been the most youth-forward of any in decades and decades. That hasn't been well communicated, and people haven't been able to see the difference that government's made. And that has been kind of a deterrent and a barrier to voting. So what I think, and I just released a significant research project for a 501c3 I'm advising called Future Voice. And we really focused on the 5 kinds of younger voters, right? We have about 15% or so who are the folks who always vote. I call them the civic youth. But there's another half, Al, right, who vote when they can see the difference. I call them show me voters.
Yeah, the show me voters are the ones that interest me.
Right?
Yeah.
It's extremely important because there's a story to tell. There's a story to tell.
John, I'll turn it back to James. What I would guess, this may be stereotyping, but I would guess JD Vance ain't going to help with young voters.
No, I mean, it's always the cynical play when people think there's a direct connection, right, between your age and how well you do with the younger voters. We knew that Bernie Sanders was one of the most popular figures, still is, among folks who's older than Biden. Vance is a millennial, but it's about values, right? It's about values. So I don't think he's going to help in any way with younger voters. There could be an opportunity, for some younger men, but I'm not buying it.
So, John, you came out with some stuff on the issue terrain of younger voters, of which people like me found not surprisingly at all, but other people were like shocked. So, what are some things that people think they care about that are not very high on their list? And what are some things that people don't think of that are really high on things that young people care about?
Yeah, so I think the most important things for people to appreciate, when I can ask it a dozen different ways.
Right.
What's a top issue, right? What do you think are the most critical issues when we think about the future of America? And it's a sense of these basic rights, okay? The right to have access to clean air and clean water, the right to access healthcare, reproductive healthcare, mental healthcare, the right to work hard and to be able to afford an education or a home. Those are the basic things that generate kind of passion among young people. Those are the things that they're deeply concerned about. Later on that list, and the second part of this list, you hear things like climate change. You hear things like Israel and Gaza. I'm not to say that those things are not important. Of course they are, but they pale in comparison to what most young people tell me, whether that's in surveys, whether that's in focus group, whether that's in day-to-day conversation.
And what about student debt forgiveness?
Student debt forgiveness, that is not going to rank at the top of the list. However, that, I think, to put into context, James, is a kind of a key plank in terms of economic stability.
Right.
So it is, I think, a critically important issue for a couple of reasons, not just because of, but I think mostly because that was something that young people know was promised in 2020, and that was delivered to the tune of, what is it now, over $160 billion, right? So to me, the issue of student forgiveness is critical because that's the show me part. That's the idea that young people voted and they received significant they received significant dividends in terms of what the government was able to provide. And it's just one part, I think, of a broader economic package or economic perspective.
So I have this idea, I know you and I got you on here, but I hope you put it in a poll or focus group. And my idea is these young people live in a different economy than us. They're net borrowers. We're net savers. All right. They don't see themselves as being able to buy a house, or they don't see themselves being able to educate their kids at a top flight school. So I think Harris should be for a tax increase, all incomes above $400,000, and put the money in a first-time home buyer relief fund. All right, where when I went to law school, I was in a GI Bill. I bought my first house, no down payment, the lowest possible interest rate. I got $300 in 1971 every month to do what I wanted to. I could buy books. I could go to French Quarter. I could, put it all in black. It didn't matter. I mean, black and red roulette. Okay, so I know you do. But you always gotta make yourself clear in this world. But I think any kind of thing that you showed them that in a lot of the inequality is generational. I know we have racial inequality and we have rural and urban inequality, but there's a lot of generational. And I think if she just showed that she understood that, I think it could help. It's just my idea. I'll throw it up for you.
No, I think that is essential. And I think that was something that I was hoping the Biden-Harris administration would lean more into, certainly during the State of the Union. It's funny, I combed through the IRA legislation recently for some polling, and there's a couple sentences in there about a renter's bill of rights, which doesn't have much teeth. It's essentially a series of suggestions, and that was among the highest tested thing in the survey. Just recognizing, right, the difficulty of being independent and moving on, whether it's an apartment or housing, I think it really speaks to this generation. And I think it's an opportunity to actually win back some of those younger men who are wondering whether anybody's listening to them over the Democrat.
Yeah, before I turn it over, I'll just make a point. Scott Galloway, who I didn't know very much about him. I found him kind of a bit of a know-it-all. But he did a TED Talk video on the intergenerational theft. I actually really like Scott Galloway now. I think he made some A-plus points, all right? And I didn't just like him anything. I just, like I said, he just struck me as some NYU know-it-all. But when somebody hits it, I like to give them credit. You hit it at Harvard, okay? You hit it hard, brother. Go ahead, Albert.
Well, we also it was nice because even though you're at Harvard, you talked English to us, and we appreciate that, John. Listen, thank you. You are a great guest. We're going to stay in touch with you for these next, whatever it is, 97 days. And
we're going to hang on every word, I promise you.
No one knows that vote the way you do. So, John Della Volpe, thank you so much for being with us.
Great to be with you guys. Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
There's so many outrages here in the United States and the political community. But now for the outrage of the week, I want to go down south of the border to Venezuela. 25 years ago, Hugo Chavez and his sidekick, Nicolas Maduro, promised the Venezuelans, if you elect us, we will turn power over to the people. They have done just the opposite. Really a terribly authoritarian dictatorship. They jail dissidents. They clamp down on any press freedoms. It's just a brutal regime. So they had an election this year. And all of the polls beforehand and the exit polls showed the opposition was going to win rather decisively. Guess what? When the ballots came in and the votes were counted by the authoritarian government, they said Maduro had won with 51%. Stephen Levitsky of Harvard, who studies Latin America, said it's the most egregious fraud he has ever seen in a South American election. Wow, that says something. This is an illegitimate regime, and the United States and all of its allies, hopefully most of the South American countries, will ratchet up sanctions, not recognize this government, make it so difficult that at some point they're going to have to capitulate. People say you're just only hurting the citizens. Well, something like 7 million have left. It's so bad down there. And the only way they're going to get any kind of a decent system from a country that had resources and industrious people is to get rid of this corrupt regime.
Well, I'm going to read something because I want to make sure I get it just right. Former President Donald Trump has said in a radio interview on Tuesday that Vice President Kamala Harris, quote, doesn't like Jewish people, unquote, despite the fact that her husband, second gentleman Doug Emhoff, is Jewish. Number one, she doesn't like Israel, Trump said to Harris on WABC radio program Sid and Friends in the morning. Number two, she doesn't like Jewish people. Everybody knows it, but no one wants to say it. When Trump's supporter of the show's host, Sid Rosenberg, then disparaged Emhoff, all right? Then he went on to say he's not a real Jew, and neither is Bernie Sanders. And he says, Rosenberg said, he's Jewish like Bernie Sanders is Jewish. Are you kidding me? He's a crappy Jew. He's a horrible Jew. If you're Jewish, I can't tell you, I can't speak for, you're not supposed to speak for something you're not. I'm going to speak for Jewish people. They don't like this shit at all. Not remotely. And the idea that they go on, they say this, it's just what rotten, trashy people they are. All right? They're just not, they're not only they're not nice people, they're really bad people. The whole thing. And by the way, what is WABC doing hosting something like this? Are they owned by ABC? Yeah, I know they're a big radio station in New York City, which I don't know. I'm not going to say nothing, but I think they're Jewish people living in the New York area. Not too sure. I think we're going to see a lot of them at the 92nd Street Y. And I just, like I say, I don't like to speak for a class of people that I'm not, but I don't think this is going over very big.
Hey, now for our listener questions, a lot of good ones. A lot of them are on the Harris race and vice presidential choice and things that we've discussed in the show. So I'm going to pick ones that I think add to that. James Catherine in Palm Beach, Florida says, why is it such a scandal or a big deal to have a woman VP or possibly a woman president? I think she's getting at the fact, have we gotten over that?
Well, look, Hillary won the popular vote fairly comfortably. Harris was on the ticket and she won. I think sometimes we think like we used to think. And I just kind of the view that the people that matters to, they're not going to vote for us anyway. And I wouldn't even, and I've said it publicly, said now, but apparently she's taken herself out. I wouldn't be at all uncomfortable with a Harris Whitmer ticket. All right, it wouldn't bother me in the least, and I don't think it cost you that many votes. They talk about, well, if you're Jewish, I don't think Lieberman cost Al Gore hardly any votes in the year 2000, quarter of a century ago. So, I think we overestimate the effect of that.
Yep. Nancy in Erdenheim, Pennsylvania, who says, I bet Al doesn't know where it is. Nancy, you're right. I don't know where Erdenheim, Pennsylvania is.
I know most places.
Right. But I'll find out, Nancy, and we'll talk about it. She asked a very good question. Why do so many pundits refer to Pennsylvania as a Midwest state? You're right, Nancy. It's journalistic shorthand jargon. It is not a Midwest state. It's an Eastern state. And their athletic conferences, their academic, everything else. However, when you think of Western Pennsylvania and Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin, that makes it easy jargon to talk about the Midwest belt. But it is a eastern state that is different than the New England or New York states. And it's the one thing it is the eastern part of Pennsylvania is quite different from the western part of Pennsylvania. Used to be the West was heavily Democratic and the East more Republican. It's reversed in the last 20 years. James?
Well, I don't nitpick, but Penn State's in a big town. I mean, I know Maryland and Rutgers in a big town too, but you think of that as a Midwest.
Yeah, is New Jersey a Midwest state?
Right. I understand. But I wouldn't. I definitely would not call it a Midwestern state. But you could certainly say that particularly maybe the western third is more like Ohio than it is New Jersey. I mean, but it's a kind of big state, and it's but it like I say, it depends on where you are. But I wouldn't call it a Midwestern state because it geographically doesn't match up to that. But attitudinally, a third of the state, 40% of the state does.
Nancy, we're going to find out where Erdenheim is,
right.
I promise you. Michael in East Brunswick, New Jersey. That is an East Coast state. Says Michael is the political strategist. He says Dems have a very simple strategy for victory: driving core Democrats, young suburban women, etc., in battleground states. That's it, right, James?
No, I think it's a little more complicated than that. But I mean, it certainly. But by the way, I used to live in East Brunswick, 1988, the Frank Lautenberg campaign. I mean, that's an important component. But, we got to cut into vote in these rural counties and not get the vote run up on us, particularly in places like Western Pennsylvania, if you will, northern Wisconsin, rural Michigan. And, of course, and a lot of it is going to depend. And look, there's some evidence we're going to be talking to John Della Volpe that, under 30 have traditionally been, there were 17% of the electorate in 2000 and gave 62% of votes to Democrats. Blacks are very important. They were 12% of the electorate, gave by 91% to Democrats. I think the things are improving if you look at what happened last night in Atlanta. But I don't think it's just, there was a lot of the Hillary 16 strategy, which, as we know, didn't turn out to be that great a strategy. But it's certainly an important and growing part of the Democratic coalition. The recent events, I think, will make them even more. But it's kind of, we need to look at the election a little bit broader than just that.
Yeah. Yep. Steve in Devon, Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up, James. Got a great congresswoman there, a Democratic congresswoman. Devon's a nice little town on the further reaches of the main line. Steve says, MAGA Republicans have said there's going to be a civil war if Trump loses. I'm sure there are eyes and ears on this. What's your take? They're right. There will be. There'll be two civil wars. Number one, I worry about the streets. I worry about the violence. I think he will encourage it as he did last time. He could lose by 7 points and he'll still say it was stolen and they're stealing it from you. And internally, the fight he owns the Republican Party now. And there are going to be a number of voices inside going to say, hey, if we keep this up, we are doomed for a long time. And that will be, after Barry Goldwater lost in 1964, there was a big internal fight. This will be far worse because Goldwater said some dumb things in that campaign, but he wasn't a take no prisoners, mean, evil, vindictive neo-fascist the way this guy is. So, yeah, it's going to be really ugly.
Okay, kind of take up a little bit. First of all, it'll be funded by Russia. All this stuff is funded by and agitated by Russia. All right, just so we know who we're dealing with here. Let's be very upfront. And it's correct. A lot of these protests, anti-God protests, are being inspired and funded by Iran. We're used to it. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier in the show. I'm not sure this thing is not losing some of its punch. Yeah, you're going to have some yahoos and some crackers that are going to be there. But I just think that, his rallies are just people starting to leave a little early. It's starting to fall a little flat. His act's a little flat. Now, he could get it back. I'm not saying that he can't get it back, but I find these people to be a little less threatening today than they were a month ago.
I don't disagree with that, but you just watch after this election. As I say, it's going to be an inside-outside war. The outside war is, whether they march on the Capitol the way they did last time or not. There's going to be a lot of ugliness. Our friend Kathleen Ballou out of Chicago said, I just think it'll unleash a lot of really bad stuff. But internally, the Republican Party is going to have, a really, I think, a huge internal struggle as to whether they're still going to be the Trump Party or not.
I think they're basically going to be the Trump Party. I don't think there's party. I think Trump showed us that in these primaries. And, if you look at the way that they run and how they all cower to him, I mean, it might not be
if he keeps his mojo, you're right. Yeah, but if he loses his mojo,
I think he's much has lost something. Now, what I'm not going to say that's a condition that's going to continue forward, but it might. But he's not landing right now, and they've been hit. And JD Vance said there was sucker punch. Well, it was a damn effective sucker punch, and I can sense energy dissipating somewhat. I'm not telling you it's going to continue, or it can't bounce back, but he's trying hard, and that's the one thing that'll kill you in politics is the sense that you're trying too hard, and that's what he is.
Shorter term now, Aaron in Joint Base Lewis McCord, Washington, says, how do we get the most bang for our Kamala Harris donation? Do we donate it directly to the candidate or through an organization like Act Blue?
They have so much money. All right. There's money that what I would do is I would give it to the Wisconsin State Party.
All right? He's in Washington, James.
Well, okay, I'll expand a little bit, but if you were looking to help her, I would think about making donations to well-run state parties, Virginia being another one. But those are some that I think of off the top of my head that would be particularly effective. And I would think the campaign is swimming in money.
Yeah, and you're certainly right about Wisconsin. I didn't mean to dismiss Wisconsin. Pete in Raleigh, North Carolina, said, would it help Kamala Harris if Joe Biden resigned and she could campaign as president, or would that backfire? Bad idea, Pete. Bad idea. Too cute. Complications from that. Questions about what did she know about him surface even more. Keep it as it is.
Yeah, absent something catastrophic, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
And thank you for the question, but it's a bad idea.
Yeah, no, but it's a good question. James, man, what do they do? I mean, what does Aaron Judge get when the pitcher tosses a 95-mile-an-hour fastball right down the middle of the plate, right? I mean, right. All right. So you're ready now. You're Judge. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready. I love that guy's so good at something.
Adam in West Fork, Arkansas says, I was hoping James would indulge me by expounding upon the virtues and strengths of a Harris Landrieu ticket. There it is, James. It's right down the middle, huh? Come on, Aaron.
I did a Substack interview, Aaron. I'm sure you saw it. Man, I hope you did.
Of course I did.
and I have this single theory that it's not required that you like. I don't think that Harris dislikes Mitch at all. We have no reason to believe that. But that you don't have to like your vice president. You don't have to respect him. It's got to be someone to help you win the election. See Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Johnson, see Roosevelt, John Nance Gardner, see Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, see Reagan, George H.W. Bush. That's just vapid shit. But the reason that I like Mitch is because he's the best communicator in the Democratic Party. And I don't think it's particularly close. I think Josh is a great communicator, Andy, all of them. I just think his communication skills are on another level, almost like I've never seen since maybe Bill Clinton or Obama or somebody like that. So that was my theory. It's pretty clear that I don't think it's going to happen, but it's a way to think about things. And if you think about it, what I view the correct way, that's the spot you land on.
Yeah, totally. Great questions.
Yeah.
And again, keep them coming. If we didn't get to them this week, and hopefully our discussion on the vice presidential possibilities covered most of your questions there.
Yeah.
So thank you.
At the bottom line, we don't know. But
James, we got a couple minutes, and I got to tell you, I know a lot of great athletes. I've watched a lot of great athletes, and different sports. Simone Biles is right up there with the best of them. I mean, to watch her perform the last couple nights has just been extraordinary. And it's just, I'm not a big gymnastics fan. I know it's big at LSU.
Right.
But watching those women, it was the men too. But Simone Biles and those women were really extraordinary.
The thing about that is, it says you go to a basketball game and you see somebody drain a 28-footer. You say, I could do that, and you can. If you don't do it with much frequency, but you can do it. If somebody gets a lot of wood, I remember when I was younger, one time I got a lot of wood on the pitch. Or somebody makes a catch in football, and you say, well, maybe I could have done that. There's no one that looks at these gymnastics people and say, I think I could do that.
James, no. when she starts, my heart starts pounding. I mean, she goes up in the air, and I think, oh my God, this is going to be awful.
I watched it. I tell you what I really enjoyed last night is I watched the gold medal China, North Korea, and I was actually pulling for North Korea. I said, because, you start watching something.
No, I missed it. Which sport was this?
In ping pong. I'm sorry.
In ping pong. Oh, yeah.
Let me tell you, man, those sons of bitches are good. Everybody played ping pong in the garage, and, who doesn't do that? But sometimes watching a game, and I'll watch Oregon State. And I don't care. I mean, I'm not thinking about it, and I'll start pulling for a team during the game.
Right.
No, mate, I was actually pulling for North Korea. And they're all young, and the intensity, the arena was packed. But the Olympics just gives you such, I like the anti-Olympic people. I don't even understand them.
I don't either.
I just don't understand them. But that game is, the gymnastic stuff, by the way, just alert, but we think we have Edwin Moses, one of the great Olympians of all time, who is in Paris, and Edwin can, give us a kind of across-the-board update next week.
Which will be when the track and field really gets underway.
Yes.
Underway. I love that. One thing that they've done too this year, I said before, I miss Bob Costas, but NBC has done a pretty good job of making it fun. It ought to be serious. It ought to be a big deal. But to watch Snoop Dogg and Simone Biles 50 feet apart dancing with each other was just a laugher. I have loved it. I said to myself last night, I got some work to do. I'll turn it on and off, and 2.5 hours later, I was still watching.
Well, there's an old quarter miler. Quarter milers they close every Olympics. The 4x400 meter relay is the final, is I think the best event on the Olympic court, and we generally do pretty good in it. But 400 meter hurdles is huge. Some people think that's the most difficult event in track. That it's really 400 meters is like a sprint. You sprint and jumping over 10 hurdles. That's pretty hard. I'll say that.
And the times are incredible.
Oh, man. Yeah.
A guy like Edwin Moses would do that, and his time would be better than most people doing it without hurdles.
He could win a conference championship in just a flat 400 meters.
Man. Anyway, these are great Olympics, and I look forward to next week. I only caught a part of the basketball game. I hope we see more basketball.
I saw the 3-on-3. Serbia was kicking our butts.
Yeah.
I don't know if they ended up winning it.
They did. We lost.
That's a pretty good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I did too, but I think I only saw a little bit. But I think we probably could have picked a better 3-on-3, don't you?
I don't know how they come up with it.
I don't either. But some of the team rejects, the NBA rejects.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think they should have made it two guys and one female, or two females and one guy.
Yeah,
I think they ought to kind of get Caitlin Clark and, a couple other people. I don't know. It'd be kind of fun to see. But the other thing is, once you get open, that's it. You're going to make the shot. They don't even follow you to the basket.
Well, the other thing that has been reaffirmed as I look at the basketball games, remember we discussed they ought to do away with what's become really a joke, which is the NBA All-Star game. One team wins 187 to 182, and they ought to have,
the U.S. versus foreign.
U.S. versus foreign players.
They'll probably lose.
It'd be a heck of a game.
I don't know how big of a prohibited favorite we are to win the basketball tournament. I think we are. We will be.
We are, but there are some awful good teams.
Yeah. Damn right they are.
Talk about a miracle. France last night was down 4 points with 10 seconds to go. A guy takes a 3-point shot, hits it, gets fouled. Goes into overtime.
That 72 Olympic loss, including like losses to Ole Miss, including everything. That one sticks with. That's a top 5 of all time.
Oh, it was awful. Yeah, it was awful because it was A, unfair, B, totally political.
Yes, it was just so. It's the other one is that Saints Rams call. It's just like, I didn't really see this. This could not be happening right in front of my eyes. And it did. It did.
I still remember when Max Scherzer was denied a perfect game because they say the batter leaned into the ball and claimed he was hit. Terrible call.
Right. Yeah, and some guy cost some pitcher no-hitter back to Tigers. Must have been 3-4 years ago. And,
it was a bad call, yeah.
And the guy said,
but it was an honest.
Yeah,
it felt
bad about it.
Yeah,
he felt bad about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody says that, and the pitcher said, I understand, man. But when they start getting there, I call them like I see them. Well, sometimes you see them wrong, and that's part of sports. I don't think there's going to be umpires in another 5 years. There may not be. I don't know if I think that's a great. With instant replay, I guess it's an expense, but instant replay has just made sports significantly better. It's just one of the great inventions of the world. And remember, people didn't want it first, and it was, I don't know, it's kind of part of the game, and then they weren't going to do it for pass interference, and they weren't going to do it for this, and they don't do it for balls and strikes, but it's coming, and people just want to watch a fair game.
Well, I agree. I'm totally with you. Although in the NBA playoffs, sometimes those replays would take 5-6 minutes. It doesn't have to be that long.
It doesn't have to be that long.
It really doesn't. But I like replay, but you can do it, and you can look at it, make a decision in a minute or two.
Right, and it make it in New York anyway.
Yeah.
And they said that they got 5 different camera angles in an NBA playoff game.
Yeah.
I agree. You don't want to drag it out. But then this game is tight and there's 32 seconds left to go, and you got your adrenaline going, and then keep going back and forth, and just got to make a decision.
I agree.
What they should do, if it's inconclusive, you have a possession hour. All right? So one team gets the first inconclusive call, and the next team gets the other inconclusive calls.
But there are not many that are inconclusive. There are a few. Most of them, even the ones that are overturned, you can say, yep, they were right. They should have been overturned.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. Now remember, get your tickets for when James and I take Politics War Room live to the 92nd Street Y in New York City on September 19th. You can get tickets at politicon.com/tour, and we can't wait to see you there. As always, send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. Following this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you check out the links to our sponsor, Quince, in our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting them because when you do, it helps make this podcast happen. Now, to keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and check out our Substack at politicswarroom.com. James and I are constantly adding new content. Go take a look. You also can find other shows you might enjoy on the Politicon YouTube channel or when you search Politicon on your favorite podcast sites. Remember, please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room planning.